Up until this point, Greece hadn't scored a goal at Wembley, and now they've just beaten England by 2-1. And in this video, we're going to be diving down into how they did it, and also what went so wrong for England. Naturally, I feel this is going to turn into more of a dissection of what went wrong with Lee Carsley's England rather than anything else going on in the game, but I just want to take this moment to focus and reflect on how brilliant Greece were. From their defensive point of view, staying really nice and compact, their shape not necessarily getting bent too much. You've got the wingers who were really good at staying compact in the centre of the park, and they did an absolute number on England from a defensive point of view, staying nice and compact, making sure there wasn't too much space in between the lines, pushing up as far as they possibly could, while also giving themselves a huge out to try and break through England's press, keeping a real good danger zone behind that England high line. And I was extremely impressed with Greece's left winger, who actually ended up following Trent Alexander-Arnold into midfield quite a lot of the time to make sure that Greece weren't overloaded in the centre of the park. They were absolutely fantastic, and no matter what I go on to talk about with regards to England, should it ever take away from the brilliant performance that they put in, because they thoroughly deserved everything they got, and that was a monumental win. From an England perspective, I expect that this match, this result, will be swept under the rug, going under the radar, and won't be mentioned past the end of the international break. But I do feel that there is a really serious topic that needs to be considered, a real serious sentiment that needs to be aired, and that is the need to play every single quote-unquote star player when it comes to featuring in an England match. I gave Lee Carsley quite a lot of credit for the way that he adapted this England side in the previous international break, utilising a two-man midfield while also building up from the back using a three-man defence, then pushing players out wide and utilising what would be best suited for the good of the side. All of that I can't repeat because it wasn't the case. Phil Foden and Jude Bellingham were now fit and available for international duty, and they came straight back into the side, possibly at the cost of both England's form, but also at the cost of Ollie Watkins and Dominic Solanke, who have been fairly good for their clubs. Phil Foden hasn't really featured all too much for Man City and yet walked straight into the lineup. Jude Bellingham, while he's been good for Real Madrid, I don't necessarily see him as an out-and-out striker, and his link-up play wasn't really there. Cole Palmer, for all of his good play, I feel like he was almost shoehorned into the side because he was the in-form player. Bukayo Saka kept his place, and rightly so. Anthony Gordon, the same. But I can't help but feel that a lot of these players just don't really make this England side work, and the link-up just wasn't there. Then when you talk about them from a defensive point of view, you really had just Declan Rice screening across the entirety of the midfield. It wasn't anywhere near good enough. And then when they tried to go forwards, there was no one to try and break the line. So once you had players going forwards like Saka and Gordon, they were your only out. Bellingham failed to really break the lines, and neither did Foden. Rice and Palmer tried to make something happen, but time after time again, once Alexander-Arnold moved into midfield, Rice was left by himself to try and shuffle across and make sure that they were really composed with the ball. Once the ball actually and possession got turned over, it was then down to Greece to be able to hit the space in beyond. And in fact, Greece ended up getting the ball into England's net 3 times. And that was called offside. They actually ended up getting the ball into the net 5 times. 3 of them were actually offside. Greece thoroughly deserved to win this match, and the imbalance within this England side was there laid out for all to see, and it was extremely concerning to see yet another manager based upon philosophy and based around team play really falter to the need to play every single star player. Defensively, there were a shambles with Cole Palmer joining up with Declan Rice to be those 2 central defensive midfielders, leaving Declan Rice with far too much to do, being asked far too much. And then going forwards, they essentially did Greece's job for them because there was no running in beyond, no breaking of the lines, no breaking of the channels to force the Greece players to run back towards their own goal. And it meant that a lot of the play was congested within this midfield area. And once they found that they didn't have enough space, a couple of intricate passes later and England had lost possession. possession, leaving Greece with a number of different opportunities and a lot of space to hit beyond. And once they did manage to really break the lines on that one or two occasions through past this Greece defence, it then became quite apparent that England would be able to get in on goal. But those chances were very few and far between. And one of the only times that they did manage to go forwards and break the line and run in beyond was actually for their goal. You got Trent Alexander-Arnold right here playing the ball through into Ollie Watkins, who managed just to break the line of that Greece defence. And then it was all a matter of really playing through, utilising the space, utilising his time on the ball to be able to find a pass. There was no England player in sight in the box, so he had to cut it back to the edge of the area, and then it was a matter of who could really follow onto it. Of course, it was that man yet again, Jude Bellingham. Cole Palmer looked like he was going to be lining up a shot on the edge of the box, but he must have got a shout, and Jude Bellingham ends up hitting it. It was a singular moment of quality in what was a very dismal affair for England, in, like I will say again, a game which Greece fully deserved to win. Overall, take nothing away from Greece, but this was an absolutely dismal England display that leaves far more questions than it does answers. What does this mean for Lee Carsley? Is he still in the running to be the England manager, considering this level of team selection? Everyone gets something wrong, but really to this extent? John Stones is a mainstay in this England side and walks back into it, but after this display of shipping 5 goals towards the England net, 2 being correctly registered, 3 being offside, it makes you wonder whether he should keep his spot. Cole Palmer is definitely a man in form, but playing him to the detriment of the entire team might not be the answer. And then when we look towards the front of the pitch, Phil Foden has played over 1,000 minutes of England football without registering a goal or an assist. At what point do we need to question his inclusion within this England setup and within this first 11? Jude Bellingham is the man to really look towards. He got a goal yet again, but at what cost, I'd argue? His team play is somewhat lacking sometimes, and sometimes he feels like he needs to be the one guy to do everything, and perhaps he is, but we need to know the correct position, the correct moment to play him to be able to get the best out of the rest of his teammates. And that leads me to my final question. At what point will a manager look at the collective and look at the whole and focus on the team aspect rather than the individuals? Rather than looking at the star players, I would like a team to be formed rather than just a collective of the best players that England can pick from. Finally, let's wrap everything up by taking a look at the 2 Greece goals. We're going to start, obviously, with the first one that they scored, and I just want to mention this England shape, because I actually think it's really good for the most part, but like I said, Cole Palmer left Declan Rice with far too much to do. Instead of being sat next to his midfield partner, he ended up going a little bit further forwards, and that left a huge gap in the centre of the park. Aside from that, I think the width and the narrowness of the way that England defended was really good, pushing players out wide and forcing either crosses or attempting to really contest them later on down the line, but in more wide areas. But this is not acceptable. You can't be allowing this, and as the play progresses and as it continues, you can see the ball's going to be played into the striker, and then it's all a matter of how he takes a touch. But you've got to be able to challenge this better if you're England. You've got 1, 2, 3, 4 players in and around him, and he's able to turn, he's able to swivel, he's able to then go round, and he takes a good 2 to 3 touches. 4 England players are around him, and nobody gets a touch, nobody gets a movement, nobody even tries to outmuscle him, nobody gets a block in. It is brilliantly done by the Greece striker, but it is shocking defending from England, and they are once again 1-0 down. And now finally, let's take a look at the second goal, and this is calamitous to say the least from an England perspective. But you've got 1, 2 and 3 Greece players ready to go and take that moment. It's actually in and around the 90th minute, and the chaos that Greece actually cause England in this particular moment is so good. You've got a block shot onto the Greece player who's trying to run through the centre of this England defence. You've got Rico Lewis who's about to try and clear the ball, but do the Greece players give it up? No, he's determined, he's closing them down. They are so good, so dynamic, and that is the real word that I would use for this Greece side: dynamic. They are absolutely brilliant, and they thoroughly deserved everything they got in this game. They were fantastic, and then it falls to Pavlidis, and he does a brilliant job of just taking it, moving it to the right hand side, and then firing it through Jordan Pickford. But there's one more moment that I want to take a look at, and that is actually the positioning of John Stones, who decides to stand right into Jordan Pickford's eye line. I didn't think Pickford had a very good game at all, and that's a completely different talking point. But John Stones really does not help his goalkeeper out here. He stands right in his eye line, and I'm not surprised that Pickford wasn't able to save it. Look at this. He's essentially in the same width of him. Now, I understand that John Stones is just trying to block the ball. I completely get it, but he didn't help his goalkeeper there, did he? But it's a brilliant, brilliant finish, and as I said earlier, it's thoroughly deserved, and Greece walk away the victors. It's absolutely fantastic, but from an England point of view, it's pretty woeful. But let me know what you guys think. What did you make of England's performance? What did you make of Greece? How good did you think they were? What does this mean for Lee Carsley and the England setup? And what do you think England should do going forwards? Let me know your thoughts. I would love to hear from you. Thank you ever so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed. I hope you learned something new, and I hope to see you in the next one. But until then, my friends, take care.